Hey everyone, as you can already tell, I want to speak on something pretty serious tonight. And I've been wanting to speak on this case for a long time. My reasoning for not doing so sooner was that the case was under appeal and that AfriForum had taken up the case, and I didn't want to speak out until they got their answer for the appeal. So, for anyone watching that doesn't know, on the right-hand side, the top picture, this is Phillip Schutte. He's the bigger guy. And forgive me if I don't say the names exactly right. And then the guy next to him, that is Pieter Doorwaard, I think. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. But so the top picture is a picture of them standing up in court. I'm not sure exactly what day, if it was their trial. I'm thinking it was during the trial. So the bottom picture, I believe this picture is the day of their sentencing. And I showed this picture to show you the red shirts in the background. This picture is really heartbreaking to me, to see them with their heads down, like they just can't believe it. But the EFF being in the background, during this trial, the EFF intimidated the court, the families of these men, the town of Coligny, everyone. They incited riots in the town, where the other two pictures on the side, that shows some of the rioting. I mean, people's homes were burnt down. It was complete chaos. So, in other words, people were afraid. There was an angry mob demanding that these two men be convicted and go to prison, even though they are innocent. So, I've had an article the other day, and this is a really good article. There's also another one that it's brilliantly written, and it compares this case to the book To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if anyone has read that. I read it when I was in school. It was a requirement. I think now they've taken it out of school, but it's a great book, and it's about a great miscarriage of justice. I'll put the links in so that you can read it. It's very long, but it is very good. So the article I'm going to speak on, it says, the Northwest High Court has made another scandalous ruling. Last year, Judge Ronnie Hendricks found Pieter Doorwaard and Phillip Schutte guilty of killing Moshe, I think was the kid's name. I say kid, I think he was about 17, by throwing him off of a truck for stealing sunflowers. Now their appeal against the judgment has been denied. There are reasons, each independently strong enough to revise Judge Hendricks' verdict. In Doorwaard and Schutte's favor, in concert, the reasons are overwhelming, and the refusal to grant leave to appeal is thus beyond comprehension. The case against Doorwaard and Schutte was built on the allegations of a sole witness, part-time Coligny butcher Bindel Pekisi. Subsequently said he made the whole story up, and then said he'd been bribed to confess that he was a liar, maintaining that his original allegations were actually true. This is not primarily relevant to the court, as it came up after the trial and is highly disputable. So I would like to also say this witness, he admitted to being mentally ill at one point. He said that these men drove him around for hours and tortured him brutally and beat him. Yet there's not one story or one witness to come forward to corroborate any injuries to his person or anything. I mean, if you're tortured to that extent and you're beat to that extent, you have injuries. It couldn't be proven that he ever had injuries. He changed the story about what time he arrived. The first story, he arrived at 9 a.m. The second, 7 a.m. He changed the location of where he saw this happening. He lied, and then he lied about the lies. And this judge went against forensic evidence. All physical evidence says the opposite of what these guys are convicted of. The injuries of the so-called victim, if someone is beating you, torturing you, what are you trying to do? Defend yourself, put your hands up. If someone threw you off of a truck, what is your first reaction when falling? To put your hands down, He would have had injuries to his arms, his hands. He did not. He had injuries that were consistent with a tuck and roll, as if he jumped, which he did, and broke his neck. I would also like to say that these two men had done this many times, taken people to the police station for stealing, trespassing. They had never once in the past been accused of being cruel, of beating anyone, of anything until this. So the second reason to doubt Pekisi's allegations is based on forensic evidence. The state's pathologists found that the most remarkable thing about Moshe's injuries was that there were none to the palms, hands, or wrists. His injuries were consistent with a tuck and roll type fall, but not with a palm out dive. And yet in court, Pekisi described seeing Moshe fly from the truck in a swimmer's dive position, horizontally extended with head lower than feet, arms and hands extended out ahead to break his fall. Exactly the position ruled out by the lack of hand and wrist injuries that Dr. Murad found so significant. This contradiction notwithstanding, Hendricks found that Dr. Murad's corroborated Pekisi's story. So the judge actually said that the forensic pathologist corroborated this witness statement, even though it was the exact opposite. The third reason to doubt the allegations, if possible, even more clear-cut, Pekisi described being taken by the assailants on a hell ride that stretched from Coligny almost as far as Lichtenberg. Even if they traveled at an insane 120 kilometers per hour and conducted the various tortures, taking him into a dam before nearly shooting him, making him drink, and shooting bullets around his ankles, this would have taken an hour. Doorwaard and Schutte's phones, however, say otherwise. They had 3 phones on them the morning of the death. Between them, these devices registered 23 transactions during the critical period. Each transaction call or SMS is routed through a specific tower and recorded. The high-frequency use of these phones indicates that they could not have left the vicinity of Coligny and its immediate surroundings for more than a few minutes at a time that morning, a factor totally inconsistent with Pekisi's story and largely ignored by Hendricks' judgment. A crucial aspect of this political element is the testimony of a warrant officer who knew Pekisi and doubted his story from the start. Judge Hendricks signed out the officer for heavy criticism in his final judgment. He failed to mention that this officer did not appear to testify before the court, citing fear for his life and the safety of his family. Judge Hendricks further failed to apply any pressure on the police or public prosecutor to investigate why it was that a South African police officer might see the prospect of giving witness under oath in court as a life-threatening event. I would also like to say that the two officers originally that were assigned to this case that doubted Pekisi's story, they were removed from the case, and an investigator assigned that knew nothing of the case. The two original officers did not testify at court. There were two, and neither one of them testified at court. It goes on to say, Doorwaard and Schutte languish in prison as apparent sacrifices made at the altar of prejudice to appease a mob that is hungry. As Rhiannon Milan put it, for white flesh. The process of appeal is not exhausted. A new appeal to a higher court can be expected shortly. So the good news is that AFRIFORM is staying on their case, and they're going to represent them in the higher court. And it is so necessary to get this story out and to get some attention to it, because the more eyes and the more spotlight put on this judge and this court, is good. It's for the best, because if they have the world looking at them with the spotlight on them, they're more likely to do the right thing. And this is just, this story has bothered me for so long, because, you know, I've seen the before and after pictures of Phillip. In this picture, he's a big, stout man. Now his after picture, he's so thin. You can tell that they are not being fed properly. And it's just a horrible environment for people to live in that are innocent. And it breaks my heart. I've seen all the pictures of them in court, and literally I notice the look of horror on their faces. It's like they can't believe what's happening. They can't believe what's being said. Just from looking at the pictures and the looks of agony on their faces, kills me. So basically, these men were sentenced to very long prison sentences and convicted of murder because the EFF burned half of the town, threatened to kill the families. The court threatened to burn the rest of the town if they were not convicted. These people were terrified. They wreaked so much havoc in Coligny. And this is not justice. This is the biggest miscarriage of justice, one of them that I have ever seen. What kind of judge goes against the forensic pathologist and then spins it as if the forensic pathologist agrees with the witness when the testimony was complete opposite? It's crazy. Another thing I was suspicious about is the mother of the man who died. She was called to testify. When she testified, she did not know her child's birthday or her husband's birthday. She didn't know what time he left. She didn't know anything. It was like It was as if he was not even her child. This was my suspicion anyway. I mean, how do you not know your child's birthday? It just didn't make sense. None of it made sense. So I'm going to stop here, but I would like to end by reminding everyone that these men have families. They have wives, they have children, they have brothers. They need to go home to their families. So please share this story. I will put the links to the articles in the comment section, the description. And let's bring some attention to this case for these guys internationally. And let's pray that justice is served and that they are able to go home to their families, because they do not deserve this. Thank you. And for Phillip and Pieter's family, my heart breaks for you, and I am praying for justice, and I support you, and I support them. Thank you. Good night.